Hello, everyone. I hope that everyone is doing spectacularly and welcome to this wonderful little series. My name is Jared Wetzel Brown from the class of 2017, and I was a program marshal and currently am on the 2017 class committee. Welcome to the fifth Real World for Recent Grads event and the second of 2024. What a great year! Based on the beloved Senior Spring event series held over the past several years, Real World for Recent Grads will bring together recent college graduates across the 10 classes to learn from each other and discuss relevant and real-world topics. The virtual event series will be hosted by class leaders in partnership with the Harvard Alumni Association, and today we'll be discussing changing jobs and industries. We hope that these are fun, informal, and casual for us, by us events. We also hope that these can be conversations and not just a lecture. So if you are able to, please have your camera turned on, and we welcome your participation in the chat during the opening remarks. And feel free to unmute and share anything during the discussion portion at the end of this workshop. Note that we will be recording these sessions to share by email with recent grads after and to post on alumni.harvard.edu. But before we kick off, I'll share a bit of background information. The Harvard Alumni Association, lovingly called the HAA, is the official association of all alumni of Harvard University. The HAA maintains and enhances a highly engaged, vibrant community of alumni and friends worldwide. The College Alumni Programs Office of the HAA serves more than 100,000 Harvard and Radcliffe College alumni. The HAA Recent Graduate Engagement Committee, made up of the class committee leadership across the classes, facilitates the meaningful engagement of Harvard College recent graduates with the Harvard alumni community. And now we'll hear from our speakers. First up is Nini Ren, AB, class of 2016, who will speak about moving from consulting to tech. Nini, over to you.
All right, thanks. It's kind of funny because I see some faces I haven't seen in quite a while, so it's good to be back. But yeah, I graduated in 2016 and majored in chemistry and physics, and at the time I was in FOHO. So if anybody's in FOHO, go FOHO. But a little bit more background on me. So actually, before I'll talk more about the transition from consulting to tech. But I'll paint a little bit of picture of like what happened like kind of before then. So in college, I was super interested in healthcare. I studied it sort of from first principle basis, but also like professionally speaking, like I got more interested over time, and especially like when it was a time when I was just like dealing like combining a lot of things in my head. And I thought, I was at the time looking at consulting, but also there was part of me that was just more interested in how to improve patient lives, how to make that part of things better. And over the years, like I think probably over sophomore and junior years, I kind of narrowed that down out of research, out of medicine, and sort of realized that, hey, like in business, in that part of the world, that could be somewhere that I personally could make a bit more impact relative to everything else. Um, so I kind of developed that in college. It took me a while to get there, and then right after college, I was kind of thinking about, okay, so what would be the right place to go to like kind of build those skills and be able to develop that experience. And I do think like consulting is one of the best ways, at least for me, to do that and develop a sense of how businesses work across the different industries, but specifically in healthcare. So I joined LAK, which during I think about like 4 years there, I was able to work with over 20 different clients, and many of them were across different parts of the healthcare spectrum. And after working with many of them and me trying to just improve many parts of how they grow and how they enter new markets and so forth, I realized the thing that really was an engine and what really was an opportunity was a technology piece. But of course, like I didn't exactly have that background to go into anything um, that would be a core, like whatever that might be. Like I just felt I didn't have the right experience to do that. So I went to business school instead. I specifically joined the Wharton Healthcare Management Program for my MBA, and it really helped because there was approximately 70 people who were very interested in different parts of healthcare, but about half of them were also very interested in something called digital health. And that I felt was like the perfect sort of balance of like, how do you change the healthcare industry from a technology perspective, and then have just like, very close people essentially to kind of just bounce ideas off of. And part of it just felt like that college experience that I I missed a lot. So I I was in that program, and then in the midst of it, there was this decision point, because in business school you kind of have to recruit, right? And like you come into business school, like you're like, oh, I finally made it, but actually right off the ground you have to start thinking about, okay, like what are the opportunities I want to try to recruit for, and then kind of gain that experience. And so because I realized that technology was a core piece of it, and then through business school and then just like my own searching and so forth, realized that product management was a core piece of how to drive that. I specifically looked at product management opportunities. And during the course of that search, like I kind of then realized that that was something I want to go into. So I then recruited specifically for product management positions, and Amazon for my first internship turned out to be like the best way to kind of gain experience in that side. So I did that for a summer, and I actually really, really liked it. I think went into it thinking I'm not completely sure if I want to do product, but after that experience, I learned a lot about what was fundamentally like what you had to do to like go into that space. And that meant like looking at how do you develop products and services to move into how does those serve customers, right? And from perspective of technology companies, like that is the core driver. The engineers kind of build the product managers kind of define what customers kind of want, and the alignment of those two ultimately produces those things that customers buy, and that's what creates the value. But it can't create the value if no customers want it. So that's the core kind of like core engine piece that I'm part of, and I felt that felt like kind of the right place to be. And but the only thing about that is Amazon, like at least the group I joined, and it is where I am now too. Like it's not in healthcare exactly. So that's a piece I'm still trying to figure out. But after that internship experience, I realized that tech is definitely like product management is where I want to be. And I want to actually get deeper technical knowledge. So I pursued another master's in computer science, so that at least I have some like core like coding skills, and I can actually talk to engineers without them not believing anything I say, basically. And then I had some opportunities to then also look at internships like with healthcare or digital health companies. I worked with a startup, Series B startup in healthcare, digital health. I also worked with what was then like Google Life Sciences. It wasn't specifically on the product management side, but it was product adjacent. And so got a few of those opportunities. But I still felt like my central thesis for my career is like develop the product management skills, so you know how to create products that actually create value, and then over time like transition back into healthcare. So that's been sort of how I've looked at it. And I know I'm at time, so feel free to ask questions later about it.
Thank you so much, Nini, for sharing about your time as a product manager and your interest in healthcare, and we really appreciate it. Next up, we are welcoming Caroline Davis, AB, class of 2014, who will speak about moving from private equity real estate to technology operations to becoming an author. Quite the journey, Caroline. Over to you.
Oh, hi, I'm Caroline, and yes, like Jared just said, I started my career in Hong Kong in private equity real estate, then moved to LinkedIn in San Francisco in an operations role. Yay! You see my balloons. Then I left LinkedIn to pursue a career as a fiction author, writing young adult sci-fi. I'm now represented by the literary agency that did The Hunger Games, and I do operations part-time. So my career path has had many funky transitions. But first off, I had seen that some people asked about international jobs. So here's my tip and story. I studied Mandarin Chinese in college, wanted to move to Hong Kong, and thought finance would be the easiest entry point for me since I majored in economics. But I missed the big bank's international hiring timeline and was told I wouldn't be able to do it anymore. Luckily, I didn't listen. I flew to Hong Kong during J-term, used Crimson Careers and the alumni directory to meet with older Harvard grads at smaller companies because they didn't have the strict recruiting timelines. And through that, I was able to arrange an internship that converted into full-time. So my takeaway for moving internationally would be don't take no as an answer, leverage your network, and find a different path if needed to get you there. Now, fast forward 3 years, I wasn't finding much fulfillment in finance, and then my dad died, so I wanted to move back to the States and switch industries. At first, I planned to apply to business school since a lot of my peers were, but when I tried to answer the why business school essay, I came up with, I guess I want to do tech in San Francisco. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, why don't I just go try it like I did with Hong Kong? So I moved to San Francisco. I rented a 1-month Airbnb and applied for jobs that would leverage my finance skill set, Excel, data analysis. Again, I reached out to my network. I used LinkedIn and Facebook, where you can search people who live in San Francisco. And I asked for coffee chats to learn about jobs, interview advice for how to prep or do an assignment, and referrals. So referrals can help your application get more attention in the beginning, and companies will usually give employees a bonus for referring. So they want to refer you, but make it easy for them to want to say yes. Show them you've done your research on the job, tell them why you're qualified for it. Basically, send them a cover letter. I've hired for several companies now, and I always read the cover letter. It's your chance to tell your unique story and tie it into this role. It takes more time to customize these, but it's worth it. So takeaways for my industry switching, again, leverage your network. Don't be lazy and ask to pick their brain, please don't. Do the work of researching so you aren't asking Googleable questions. Don't be creepy or demanding, but think about how you would want to be messaged. And finally, do ask, do take advantage of asking, even if it's scary, because worst case is they say no or they don't respond. And a side note, as a non-traditional candidate, prepare for rejection. I only got one offer out of 20 jobs, and it was because a non-traditional boss hired me. He took a risk because I was a risk, vice versa. Anyways, neither of us was from consulting. So higher risk than taking that safer hire. So sometimes it's not just about you. Okay, finally, my shift from tech to author. Now, this is going to be very different advice. This is when you want to make that big shift that everyone is telling you not to do. I had told myself for years that I would take time off at some point to create something. I decided it would be a book. So to test this, I stayed after work from 7 to midnight until my draft was done writing. Then I knew this was what I wanted to do. But I was scared to leave a job that everyone wanted and told me I would regret leaving. Many friends tried to help me by offering me other jobs, which was really good intentions, but the exact opposite of what I was trying to do. So just in that case, remember to stay true to your goal. LinkedIn offered me a sabbatical, and I knew that wouldn't be enough time. So I turned down the offers, I turned down the sabbatical. Now, to appease my friends and my own concerns, I convinced myself this would be my 1-year business school. Shorter, cheaper, and I'll definitely return to tech after. I knew I was lying to myself, but it helped me not stress. And I helped my friends kind of understand what I was doing. So I left with a year of savings. And when I hit the 1-year mark, I was too hooked to return to the corporate world. But I did need a job. A friend, again, network, set me up with a virtual hourly gig. And later on, I took what is now my current part-time gig. And it's with a former Harvard professor, a former econ Harvard professor, actually. So again, network. Now I make similar money to what I made at LinkedIn, and the focus on my writing is writing with jobs to support it, not the other way around. Compare that to when I left, I had no idea how I would make this work, but I trusted myself to figure it out. So takeaway for these bigger switches would be know that not everything will be perfect when you leave. You got to take that scary leap and make it less scary by shrinking it into something smaller, like a year off. And finally, play the worst case game. Worst case, could you get your old job back? Maybe, but you probably won't. So I know that's a lot. If any of it resonates with you, feel free to message me. I'm on Instagram at Caroline Davis Author, and I will happily talk and dump some voice memos in response.
Thank you so much for giving us a live voice memo. And it sounds like in the last few years, the odds have been ever in your favor. I
Oh,
really
nice,
appreciate it.
Jared.
I know, thank you. I had to take a chance, take a chance. That being said, next up we have Fatu Fall, from AB of the class of 2014, who will speak about moving from teaching to entrepreneurship. Fatu, it's your time to shine. Welcome.
Hello, thank you so much. This is a wonderful opportunity to reconnect. Yes, I'm Fatou. I'm originally from Senegal and I'm a newly minted refugee in the area in Massachusetts. I want to tell you, yes, I have switched a lot from teaching to entrepreneurship and also back from entrepreneurship to teaching, and also I've held both at the same time. So this is definitely an area I saw people ask about, like, when you said you were a teacher, were you taken seriously when you switched? These kind of questions. So I'll share that for me, right after I graduated from applied math, I went straight into teaching. I helped build a network of universities in Southern Africa. And my job, my assignment, because it was a startup and I was one of the first 10 people on the team, it was basically that half of my time was spent teaching and curriculum design. But then the other half was actually spent in skills that would prepare me for entrepreneurship, like hiring, like operations, skills like, yeah, marketing, calling students all over Africa and preparing like people, the marketing team that was going to visit, like preparing their materials. So it was very unique to have that kind of diverse experience within the same company, like having basically a portfolio of things to do. And so I would say that that's what really prepared me for the entrepreneurship track and being able to observe how from the very beginning, the founders, how they were able to do really critical things like building product market fit while still focusing on my area of comfort at the time, which was to just build data and decisions, which was my area of focus. And the other thing that was really amazing for me was that in building the curriculum for this class and in implementing this cutting edge curriculum, it had never been done before, we were inviting a lot of companies, especially startups, as case studies. And so that really helped me stay aware of what was happening in the market. So we were inviting a lot of guest speakers, and we were even having data sets from companies like Uber at the time and using that in the classroom. And so and some were from fintech companies, some were from banking groups, but like the most cutting edge part of the groups sharing their data with students and wanting them to research about it. And so that really helped me see over the 2 years that I was working on that, like what were the trends and what were the interesting, I guess, segments. And it was helping me also learn like what kind of ideas were the students most excited about? Even that was inspiring and seeing like, okay, interesting. And so that, I think people just hear teaching and they may not visualize the depth and the breadth of how much you can customize it if you are doing it in innovative institutions. That was my big luck at the time. And so after that, over time, I just noticed that I was really passionate about the business intelligence, and I was really passionate about building recommendation systems and doing that with students, and seeing also how much the companies valued that kind of stuff. And I also saw how at the time, this is like 2016, the fintech products were starting to become, I guess, it was like the beginning of product market fit in developing markets. So like in Africa, in Latin America. And so for me, I decided to take a huge leap of faith and to go to Latin America, where I had studied abroad. So I had prior experience of the language. I had studied in Spanish. I had studied statistics in Spanish, so I wasn't very scared, to be able to work in that market. And I had also built an alumni community at my study abroad college. And so when I was going and making this leap of faith and just following where I believed I wanted to stay in the developing world. I always wanted at the time to yeah, like to be in international markets, like especially emerging markets. And I had the alumni community there, and then I also like I guess yeah had the language. That's a really important thing. And so I made that leap of faith. And at the beginning, I was tutoring. That's how I made money. I saw that people asked, "How do you keep your solvency when you are doing transitions?" So tutoring was a very important part for me. Writing essays, editing. I was at the beginning, I was, yeah, same thing, referrals. My professor was very helpful. He connected me with some of his former students who were building these early fintech companies. And then I would say something else that changed things for me was attending events and volunteering. Wow, I mean, I have never met any better way to really know, you know, if I enjoy this team or this environment than to get involved from the very beginning. Whatever small thing I could do, to be present, to meet people, and to be of service, that taught me a lot. You know, they say interview the company. I never think I'm the only one being interviewed. I also have to interview and see if this is a good fit. So those are the ways that I was able to transition, and yeah, over time, you know, yeah, first learn with great teams, and then eventually I built a company in Silicon Valley that made it to Forbes and all those things. It took some time, and patience was key, and that's my experience. Thank you.
Matthew, thank you so much for talking about how you, to use your phrase, took a leap of faith, moving to Latin America, taking many leaps with your students and giving them the tools so that they could take their own leaps. And thank you for sharing so much about your experience. It was really lovely to hear.
I just forgot to say one thing. I am taking another leap of faith. This time I came here as a refugee, and we'll talk about that. Happy to follow up. Thanks.
Thank you, Fatu, so much. And we hope that everything goes well in your new space. Next up, we have Jenny Lay, AB, also class of 2014, is showing up and showing out this time. So please go ahead, Jenny, and share with us. You will be speaking about moving from management consulting to financial services. Here we go.
Hey everyone, I am Jenny. So nice to see all of you. And I have so many familiar faces. So hi, Alice. I think Fatu, we might have taken a class together. I assume I met everyone at X10, but who knows? I was in Elliott, and unlike everyone else, I'll share a dirty secret with you. Everyone seemed super composed. I was super impressed with everybody because they're all in business school, they're authoring stuff, they're in Forbes 30 and 30, etc. But when we were in your shoes 10 years ago, however many years ago, honestly, I'm going to say most people did not know what they were doing. I think half the class was pre-med. They all dropped out. There was like 5 people that ended up going to med school. I actually wanted to be a lawyer because I loved Legally Blonde, and I was really good at cross-examination debate. And I remember I did a summer internship at a law firm, and it was like the worst summer ever, not because the hours were up, but it was super boring. And so I just want to give you a little faith out there as you're kind of figuring out transitions you want to do. And if you love, hate, whatever your job, like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, we are in the past, 10 years, but we still will share and impart as much advice as we can. So the specific topic that I was looking at to share with you today is moving from management consulting to finance. I actually have a very similar background to Nini, so I'll share a little bit of that, but I also want to share with you like how I got my first job, and I'll echo a lot of what Fatu and Caroline and others said. So once again, I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and I went to Harvard, and I had no idea what I wanted to do after that summer internship. So I was kind of hitting square one of like, what should I do? Who should I talk to, etc. And I think what was most instrumental for me, takeaway one, was like seeing what other people were doing and figuring out that I didn't want to do like hard finance, but I thought consulting could be a thing. I thought like something in business would be really helpful because those people seemed like they had together. They looked like they did really fun, exciting things. I also rolled out like medical school and other, graduate schools, and ended up going to business school. So who knows there, but things will change. And so wherever you are in your journey right now, just kind of assess like, what do you like and what do you definitely not like? And what are you open to doing new experiences? And you can do this a number of ways, like talk to your friends that have done summer internships. If you're a recent grad, like class of 2023, 2020, you probably have a couple years of work experience at this point. And so if you're a teacher, if you're a consultant, you probably know what you like and don't like about your job, and you can pivot towards something else because you're still in that recent college grad phase and can pivot with 1 to 2 years of experience. So just do a lot of informational interviews, talk to your friends from, your classes, your cohorts, etc. And they'll share with you like hopefully what they make at this point, what they like and don't like about their careers. And that will kind of give you more perspective of things to watch out for and not watch out for. Similar to Caroline too, I also leverage like Crimson Careers, and I don't know all the HAA resources, but when I live in Houston, and so I think the alums here never had anyone hit them up. So I remember me and another class of 2014 person just like hit up a bunch of coffee chats. We actually asked people to like shadow them during the summer. So we like spent time like looking at a surgeon. That's where I definitely rolled out medical school. We shadowed a person that works in like private equity. And I was like, oh, maybe. So just shadow and talk to as many people as possible. And obviously do research ahead of time so you're not asking, as Caroline mentioned, like stupid or Googleable answers, but do enough research to show that you're interested. And you're at that point where you're still recent enough that's okay to ask like questions like, hey, what does the day in the life look like? What do you like about your job? What does the career trajectory look like? And imagine like, can you see yourself be them in 10 years, 20 years, etc.? And if you don't like that person, like, do they get to talk to their kids? Are they on call at like 8 p.m. on a Friday when it's date night? And they are, and you don't want that, don't sign up for that job, or do it for like 5 years and then like figure out the exit strategy to get out. So the next part that I want to talk about is like why I transitioned out of consulting, which you'll see a bunch of people in our class go to. So I joined consulting similar to the reasons that Nini, Caroline, others said. It was like the good go-to default option. I actually really enjoyed it for the 3 years I was doing it at a firm called A.T. Kearney, but I was like at the beck and call of the people that work there. And I was like, I need to quickly pivot. And so I used business school to figure out other options. And then I landed on working into financial services. So once again, it's figuring out what you like and then honing in on that. I know what I'm at time. So once again, figure out what you like and don't like, use everyone else's advices, use your network, and just be able to stay true to whatever you like and make sure that fits your finances or other reasons for why you chose that different path. Jared, over to you.
Thank you. Doing my job for me, Jenny. I appreciate it. No, thank you so much. And I'm glad to hear that you are thriving in Houston and that you recommend that people don't have to go down one linear path and they can actually taste different flavors, so to speak, and enjoy different things and think about those exit strategies as well as those switches. So thank you very much for sharing. Next up, we have Alice Zhao, AB, also class of 2014, who will speak about moving from finance to recruiting. Alice, we are ready to listen.
Wonderful. Hey, everybody. My name is Alice. I was a joint stat math major with the CS minor, was in Adams House, and also class of 2014. I'll kind of give a quick background on just what finance to recruiting means. I interned at AQR, a quantitative hedge fund out in Connecticut, and I worked there for 6 years on their equities desk. And so for those who don't know all too much about finance or quantitative finance, I was programming a lot. I was using a lot of stat and math that I learned in college for my job, telling computers to buy and sell whatever stocks that I liked. After those 6 years, I decided to pivot into recruiting. And so for the last 3 years or so, I was the head of talent at Valin, a fintech startup also started by a former Harvard kid named Andrew. And so I was the 30th employee at Valin, kind of 2.5, 3 years ago. And now the company is 300 folks. So busy with recruiting. And I was the person in charge of HR and IT and facilities and all of that great stuff. So a pretty hard right or left pivot, depending on how you take it. And so I wanted to just kind of give the hard takeaways or just like some top level insights. Number one, expect the decision to take time, depending on how hard left you want to go in your career or in the industry. It takes time. Not only does it take the due diligence that Jenny said earlier, it takes some emotional aspect of it. I was very kind of stubborn in that I wanted to use my stat and math skills for the last 6 years that I studied and I paid a lot of tuition for. And that I think was probably I should have left finance a little bit earlier in my career, but I'm so happy in this recruiting position and kind of doing recruiting as my full-time job. It takes some emotional aspect to get used to it, even beyond the kind of mental logic side of everything. Just know that that does. Also echoing Jenny a little bit, use your network, ask the hard questions. When I was personally deciding to leave finance, I wasn't really sure what industry I wanted to leave it for. And so I remember I had like a month where I just methodically, after work every day, I talked to maybe 30 or 50 people across different industries from my class, from my hometown, of just like, what do you do? Like, as a marketing person, like, what is your day to day? What do you like? What do you dislike? What are the skills that make you really good at this job? What are the skills that you think are less applicable? I pretty much grilled a lot of my friends and a lot of these like strangers, just to be really diligent about if I was going to make a career switch from finance, again, think golden handcuffs, I would be really, really confident in this. I realized during those conversations, I was not going to be a good product manager. I was not going to be a good management consultant. I really liked the stuff that a lot of these recruiters kept on saying, the good, bad, and ugly. I remember asking all kind of 30 to 50 people, like, what do you absolutely hate about your job? Like, what would make you quit from leaving? Or what would you do to like remove this from your everyday job? And a lot of that, most people don't talk about when they're trying to entice you into their industry. And so I think that's really important. Finally, just to like, as a real talk, given that I'm in recruiting, I've seen thousands of resumes, like if you're going to switch an industry, like be ready for a possible pay cut, a title cut, an uphill climb when it comes to work-life balance. Like you don't have a lot of social capital in your current industry, in your current job. And so just be expected to like work a little bit harder, have longer hours, be a little bit more clueless. I remember when I switched over to Valen, my first 6 months, I was a headless chicken. Like I felt like I was running around, not knowing what I was doing, working a ton of hours, not really getting paid as much as I did in finance, but I was a lot happier, right? And so I think like these are all trade-offs that everybody has to make of like whether they want to pivot, whether they don't want to pivot. There's not a job that's going to be rainbows and unicorns every single day of all times, of all hours of the day. But that's life, I guess, and just be reasonable when it comes to your trade-offs. And so going from finance to recruiting, I love recruiting. I've like talked to thousands of people. I've looked at thousands of resumes. If anything resonates with you, if I can help you in your job search or anything like that, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help since I went through that gauntlet as well.
So thank you so much, Alice. You made it through the gauntlet and now you're shining. And I'm very happy to hear that those things, you were able to ask those difficult questions about what your coworkers and colleagues maybe detest so that they can figure out what they really love. So thank you for sharing that. Our final speaker is Jaquel Sneed Adams, AB, also class of 2014, who will now speak about moving from teaching to community organizing to finally consulting. Jaquel, over to you.
Alrighty, hey everyone. I know that you've had to listen to a lot of us tonight, so I'm going to try to do my best to get through this and hopefully share something that's helpful. So I was one of those people that Jenny mentioned before that in undergrad, I was like, I'm going to be pre-med. That was by the end of first semester, I was like, that's clearly not for me. So very early on, I had to get to the point where I was like, just because I think that's what I want, it may not be what I want long-term. And I think just that mindset going in has helped a ton as I've shifted in my career a number of times at this point. So I made my first, I guess, major-ish shift 3 years after graduation. So when I first graduated, I was teaching through the Teach for America program. I loved so much about it. I got to go home. I went back to teach in my hometown, and there was so much about that environment that I loved. However, I was realizing that something was missing. And so a lot of that for me was this concept of, I'm seeing what's happening day to day. How do we change what's happening day to day? And so that led me into reaching into a network that I was a part of at that point, the Teach for America Network. And through one of their organizations, Leadership Educational Equity, I was able to do a fellowship in Boston that it was a policy and advocacy fellowship. And that is where I decided to make the shift from teaching and education to community organizing. And at that point, loved it. Like, it was in the organizing space, loved so much about it, loved the advocacy aspect of it, loved being able to work both hands-on in the community and also work with representatives and get involved in the policy side of things. However, I got to a point again where I was like, I love so much about this, but I feel like there's something about the skill set and opportunities network that I have where I can do even more to impact the issues that I'm working on day to day. And so that led me to grad school. So I was very anti going back to school for I was like, I just don't want to do that. But I found a program that I absolutely loved. And so went to school for public policy, came in and was like, there's no way I'm going to go into consulting. Like, I didn't go to any of the, initially I was like, I'm not going to any of the info sessions about it. I was like, I'm just going to, I'm going to work in local government. I don't know, but it wasn't consulting. However, I had a really incredible network of people around me who helped me to think through my skill sets, like what opportunities existed out there. And we're like, if you're going to try it at any point, this is the time to try it. You're in graduate school, you have to do an internship anyway. You can always pivot later. So I took this opportunity. I worked at a consulting firm for the summer while I was as an intern during grad school, and I absolutely loved it. And one thing that has been really big for me throughout this entire process is one, like, not saying no to opportunities and trying things out, because I would not have been able to experience a lot of these things without, just like, to the point that's been mentioned before, taking a leap of faith, trying something that seems like it could fit, and also without listening to the people around me. Like, I had so many incredible people in my network around me, friends, like former professors, etc., who like helped me to see things about my own skill sets and interests that I wasn't able to see and reflect on by myself. So the last couple of things I'll share is that one thing that was really helpful for me is I went to a lot of these kind of sessions where I'm like trying to hear from other people, and I'm like, I want to do exactly what they did. I want to go to that same program. I want to try to work at that same place. All of us have different stories. And so I think walking into this, knowing that none of our stories are your stories, so understand your own context. Some people aren't able to like take off a year of work, right? Like, I was teaching, there was absolutely no way I was going to be able to afford to take off. So I knew that the opportunities that I was going to have to look for were going to have some sort of paid component, right? I also knew that like I had particular interests and values in mind. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I was going into was still aligned to those missions and values. And one of the questions that I saw on the like list was kind of like, how do you know when to transition? I mentioned a couple of times, like there was a point where I was like, something's missing. It's not always about something missing. One of the best advice I got from a mentor was to really give whatever you're doing 110%. I think a lot of times, like, we're so busy trying to take the step into the next thing that we haven't taken everything we can take from our current experiences. And so being able to like really fully give whatever you're doing 100% helps you to really understand what about that experience do you really like and don't like. So a lot of the comments so far have been like reflecting on your skill sets and your values. In order to do that, you really have to like fully commit to what you're in already to make those decisions. And then lastly, I'll just say, like, don't underestimate your skills. A lot of people, like, especially you want to coming in from teaching, people are like, oh, you just sit in a classroom full of kids all day. I was like, I learned so much in those 3 years of teaching around public speaking, around like a management style, around understanding how others express themselves, how to get the best out of other people who may not see the best in themselves. And so much of that has carried over into each and every one of the opportunities that I've had since then. So I would just say, like, don't underestimate those things, and understand that there's so many of those skills that are transferable once you find the next thing that you want to explore, and explore as much as you want. There doesn't have to be one next thing. Like, who knows? I may have 10 different careers before I stop working.
Jaquel, thank you so much for sharing. And as a former TFA core member, it's so nice to meet you. I also really appreciate that you brought up this idea of how each person's narrative and their own story within and outside of the workplace is nuanced and has different context, and to follow the pages, so to speak, and write their own tale. So I really appreciate that. Now for our final few minutes, we'll open it up to our Q&A, discussion, and sharing of resources. We also welcome sharing of any resource links in the chat that you may feel you'd like to share. Please use the raise hand function in Zoom and we'll call on you. Thank you again so much to all of our lovely speakers, and I'm going to turn it over to the incomparable John Prince for this section.
Thanks, Jared. So just raise your hand in Zoom and it will call on you. Christopher, you are up first.
Sounds great. First of all, thank you all to all these speakers and you guys for organizing this. I really appreciate it. One question that I had is it necessary to have a master's degree? For example, I work in data science and I've been looking at new jobs, trying to get further in the field, and I have LinkedIn Premium, so it lets you see kind of other applicants in the field. So many of them have masters and PhDs. Is it something required if you kind of want to change? My background is in econ, not necessarily like CS or tech. Yeah.
I can try to answer that. So for example, the startup that I previously worked at, we didn't require master's degrees for any of our data science folks. The hedge fund that I worked at originally didn't require master's for quant stuff. So I think long story short, like there is no one set path of like you must have this unless you're a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that for graduate degrees. I think what recruiters, what hiring managers really look for, and this is me putting on my recruiter hat, is that you have the necessary tangible skills, right? Like masters, I don't have a master's. I have no idea if they teach you the necessary things that a tech company or a finance company or whatever type of company you want to work at wants you in their day-to-day jobs to do. So I think if you're looking at a specific industry, like figure out what types of skills do they require regressions? Do they require more like database work? Figure that out before you perhaps have to cough up a lot of money and time for a master's.
Thank you, Alice. Any other questions?
I would say
Oh, go ahead, Fatu.
from my experience, so I built a company where we were doing often negotiations for data scientists, AI scientists, and engineers. And here's what I noticed. The companies that are like more established in the field and kind of like maybe less risk averse, yeah, they will ask for the usually they will ask for the masters and the PhDs, and there's good reason, of course. They want to see that the person has been receiving a minimum of training in something, and their best proxy is what coursework was like. And then I've noticed the more risk-friendly companies, of course, especially the startups pre, I guess, Series E or something, are more, flexible about it because, well, it's hard for them to hire in general. And it's also, things move a lot in this stage. So yeah, they really need to be supported. And so, yeah, they'll be more open to it. So that's what I noticed, that it was, for me, it was noticing the risk averse versus risk friendly companies.
Thank you, Fatu. Other questions? If not, Jared, I think I'll turn it back to you a minute early to close us out.
Any final takers? Anyone want to be brave and bold? Anyone? Okay, well, it looks like our speakers are gonna get a few minutes of rest. That being said, I just want to say thank you again so much to Nini, Caroline, Fatu, Jenny, Alice, Jaquel, and all of our participants today. It was truly a joy to be here and to hear what you had to share about your own journeys. Our 6th Real World for Recent Grads event will be happening soon, and we'll be discussing home buying. We hope that many of you will be able to join us, and email invitations will be confirmed with the date to follow. So thank you all again. Stay healthy, stay happy as much as you can, and thank you so much again for your time tonight.
Thank you all.
Take care. Bye-bye.